The responsibility of a successful marriage rests on the shoulders of the wife. The family does not participate in ensuring her a place of safe return. Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we will be continuing with our textual reading of Shakuntala, and today's class will be on the fourth act. The title of this act is Shakuntala's Departure. This is a very important act because the main action of the play, which is started by the curse of Durvasa, is found in this act, and you will see the beginning of the movement from the natural world to the world of urban city life in this act. So stay with me till the end of this lecture, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so to support us. Like the other acts, here also we have a prelude, which is kind of an introduction to what is going to happen in the act. But interestingly, the prelude itself contains the most important thing that sets the course of action in the play. The scene begins and we find Anushawa and Priyamvada. They are gathering flowers for worship and rituals. And they are discussing about Shakuntala and how happy she has been because of her marriage to Dushyanta. Priyamvada, although I rejoice greatly knowing that Shakuntala is happily married to a husband of her own choice who is worthy of her in every respect, I feel rather uneasy about something. So here we see the beginning of doubts that is gaining ground in the hearts of Anushawa and Priyamvada. And in this act, especially in this prelude, we will see Anushawa and Priyamvada expressing their worries and discussing about the different problems that might happen in Shakuntala's life. Now, as I have mentioned earlier also, these two characters, Anushawa and Priyamvada, they serve as choric characters. They comment on the action, they give us background information, and especially in context of this act, we will see that they are even participating in the action, in trying to influence the action in some way. Okay, so in this act, we will see that they are coming out of their choric roles. They are coming out of their passive roles and actively trying to do something to bring about a change in the circumstance, in the fortune of the central character. So Anushawa is expressing her doubts about Shakuntala's happiness, and Priyamvada asks, and what may that be? The royal sage has been given leave to depart by the sages, grateful for the successful completion of the sacrifice. The royal sage means the king here. So he is given permission to leave now that the rituals have been completed successfully. There are no more demons attacking the sages. So now he can leave, and he has returned to his capital. So remember, we saw that Dushyanta was trying to convince Shakuntala to get married to him. In the third act, no marriage was seen, like no marriage was performed on stage. And in the fourth act, we get to know that they were married and now Dushyanta is gone. Now, interestingly, you might ask, why was no wedding shown to the audience? Now, see, this wedding was performed after the Gandharva tradition. And in Gandharva tradition, there is no provision for any witness. It is only the two participants, or the man and the wife, Their consent, their agreement is important. There is no provision for any social witness. Therefore, if that wedding was shown on stage, then that would have indirectly so many witnesses like you and me. Kalidasa deliberately chose not to show that on stage to maintain the sanctity of the Gandharvya marriage. Like as if even within this, imagined space of drama, Kalidasa is trying to adhere to the norms of the Gandharvya marriage, and therefore we do not see the wedding on stage. So Dushyanta has left, and what is Anusua troubled about? Now, in the company of his queens, so we already know that Dushyanta is married and he has many queens and consorts. Will he remember all that happened here in the hermitage, or will he not? So the question of memory, the question of forgetfulness is raised here by Anusua. And what we find is, although Anusua and Priyamvada, they are presented as a block, as a unit, like together all the time. We do not find them like speaking individually to Shakuntala, but we still can understand that Anusua asks certain questions. She is more, a thinking person than Priyamvada is. Priyamvada is more naive and she is more, young at heart. I wouldn't call her immature, but most of the time I see that Anusua is the one who is contemplating, philosophizing, and in a way presenting a more mature viewpoint, a more modern viewpoint. And Priyamvada asks her, how would Konno react if he comes to know about this wedding? And Anusua feels that he will give his approval. Now, while they are gathering these, flowers, they suddenly hear something inside the cottage or at the doorstep of the cottage. And what do they hear? A voice off stage. Off stage means the audience cannot, or the viewers or the spectators, they cannot see who the person is who is speaking out, or rather shouting. Ho there, I am here at your door. So somebody has come to the doorsteps of the ashram. Anusua feels that maybe there's a guest there. And Priyamvada thinks that surely Shakuntala is not far from the cottage. But I'm afraid her heart is far away. So they are a bit apprehensive that maybe Shakuntala is lost in somebody's thoughts and is not responding to the calls of the guest. Now they were about to leave, and then suddenly they heard something. That same voice. What does this voice say now? Woe to you, woe, you insolent girl who disregards the honored guest standing at your door. So this voice, or rather this person speaking in a loud voice, is, really very, very angry, because he has not got the kind of welcome which he was expecting. You who do not notice me, a horde of holy merit standing at your door. So the person to whom this voice is speaking to, this person has not noticed this guest. So this guest is infuriated. Because you are lost in thoughts of one. You have not noticed me because you are thinking about somebody else. You are lost in thoughts of one to the exclusion of all else. So you have excluded everything from your mind, and you can't even see that a person is standing screaming at your doorstep. You shall be lost in his thoughts. This is the curse. So the person about whom you are thinking will stop thinking about you. That's cruel. He shall fail to remember you, even as a man drunk remembers not thereafter the tale he told before. As if the episode that Dushyanta had with Shakuntala was like a drunken state. He would forget about it when he is sober. This is very insulting, you call a love relationship a drunken state, but that's a different issue altogether. Hearing this, the girls are dismayed. They are very worried. And Priyamvada realizes that a very bad thing has happened. Alas, alas, the worst has happened. Our darling Shakuntala, absent-minded, has offended some guest worthy of great reverence. So some very honorable guest is very angry and something very bad has happened. Anusua now tries to see who the guest is and she is really shocked. And it is not just any guest. Oh, cruel fate! It is the great sage Durvasa, quick to anger. Now, if you are familiar with Hindu mythologies, you would know about Durvasa. Durvasa was a very angry sage and he was a very accomplished sage. He knew a lot of things. He was very knowledgeable and a great philosopher maybe, but he was very quick-tempered. The moment somebody crossed the line or just made a very minor mistake in front of him, he used to burst with anger and curse that man, and often it was believed that the sage's curses will always come true. So they were very anxious now. Look where he is going after, cursing her so cruelly, striding off briskly, shaking with passion. And then they decide to go and plead with the sage that please forgive Shakuntala. It is her first mistake, and they decide to do that. Now what happens then? Now the point is, Anusua and Priyamvada, they were planning to go together. But while they were going towards Durvasa, suddenly Priyamvada, I don't know, she got too nervous and the flowers which she was gathering, that basket fell off from her hands and she said, you go, I'm coming. I'll just collect these flowers back. So we can understand that Priyamvada is weak-hearted compared to Anusua. Anusua braves everything and goes for her friend and comes back and tells Priyamvada that somehow she has managed to cool the sage's anger and get some consolation out of it. And what does she say? He said, like she's talking about Durvasa, my curse cannot prove false, but its power will cease. Cease means stop. My curse will stop the moment she presents some ornament as a token of recognition. So if Shakuntala presents to her husband or this person about whom she was thinking any ornament which was a gift from him, then this curse will be lifted and the person will remember Shakuntala. So now Priyamvada also said, okay, now we have a consolation here. And then they decide something. Priyamvada says, when they look at Shakuntala, that she's still lost in thoughts, and strangely, she hasn't heard a word of what Durvasa had said, screaming. So she was still lost in thought and she didn't even notice something that has happened. Priyamvada and Anusua, they make a decision here. Anusua says, I tell you what, let us keep this matter of the curse between our two selves. So we will not tell Shakuntala about this incident. Delicate by nature, our dear friend should be spared a shock. So we should not, give her this shock, okay, because she is too delicate, she is weak. And the protective instincts of Anusua are at work here. But at the same time, my point is, they should have probably gone and openly discussed it with Shakuntala. Perhaps then she would have taken more care of that ring if she knew about the curse. Now, if that happened, then there wouldn't have been a story of Shakuntala to read here or a drama to see. So all these circumstances which we see happening in the play later on is somehow rooted in this act. Anusua's decision not to tell Shakuntala about the curse, therefore Shakuntala being a little bit less careful about the ring. Okay, so all these factors come in. After this, we straight away go to the part where Anusua is thinking about how the king has behaved all these days after he has left. And we get to know that the king has not sent a word or a message to Shakuntala. So what she thinks is that maybe the curse has started to work. Alright. And Anashua speaks to Priyamvada just after a few lines. Then shall we send him the ring he left for remembrance? But with whom? So that ring was like an antidote to the curse, that he will see the ring and he will remember Shakuntala. So Anashua wanted to send the ring because she felt, just see what she says here is very important. Which of these austere hermits, serene and devoid of passions, can we ask? Now the people there in the ashram, they are hermits, they are sages. And she feels that it's not proper to ask them to go to the king with a ring. And, very important here, we can't get our friend into trouble by informing Father Konno that Shakuntala is married to Dushyanto and now bears his child. So Shakuntala is pregnant. And this whole thing is making Anashua have very bad feelings about the whole situation. In such a situation, what can we do? So they do not think of the possibility that Shakuntala herself can be sent. Okay, because Konno's permission is very vital in this context and they do not know yet what Konno would say. After this, Priyamvada informs Anashua that Rishi Konno, he is informed about Shakuntala's case and he has given his full blessings to her, accepted the marriage and has decided to send Shakuntala away to her husband that very day. And then Anashua asked, who informed Father Konno of all that had happened during his absence? And Priyamvada says, as he was entering the sanctuary of the mystic fire, a bodiless voice chanted a verse. So it was like a heavenly voice speaking out, making a prophecy. And what did that voice say? As the holy tree is with the mystic fire pregnant, so is your daughter. Know, O great Brahmana, she holds Dushyanto's glowing energy pledged for the well-being of the world. Now, why is this very important? This prophetic voice which Konno hears or claims to have heard is important because this acts as a proof of Shakuntala's relationship with Dushyanto. The facts that are laid before Konno are that Shakuntala is pregnant. He doesn't have any other facts because the word of the woman was not considered to be of any significance until and unless it was backed by any other proof or a man's word. This problem is solved through this heavenly voice. So this heavenly voice sanctifies this marriage and therefore this voice is important in establishing Shakuntala's case and her purity. Okay, so this is very important. Konno, interestingly, has decided to send Shakuntala immediately to Dushyanto because he knows that now that she is pregnant and is going to give birth to a child, it is important that she stays at the palace and gives birth at the palace. Now, Konno, who is a hermit, who is a sage, is well aware of the social requirements of a marriage. He knows about the expected qualities of the future heir to the throne. And somehow we feel that here he does not act as a sage at all. He acts as a father who knows that the happiness, the social position of his daughter could be ensured only and only if she is with her husband. Now we skip to the part where we see that Shakuntala is ready to leave the hermitage of Konno, and these lines which follow show the extent to which Shakuntala is tied to this hermitage, her bond with not just the people of the hermitage, but with the animals, with the plants, with the flowers. So this whole ambience is Shakuntala's, you can say this was the home she had. And now she has to leave this home for some unknown place. And while she is ready to leave, she pays respect to everybody. I bow to you all revered ladies. And Gautami blesses her, saying, "Daughter, may your Lord confer on you the title of Chief Queen as a mark of his high esteem." So she is now, kind of pushed into a competition that she has to be the first in the eyes of the king. Why? Because her power will come from the fact that she is mother to the next king. And that can be ensured only if she is the chief queen. And then the other wives of the sages, they bless her. "Child, may you give birth safely to a son who will be a hero." So if you look closely, you will see that they are not just wishing for a safe delivery of a child. They are wishing for the safe delivery of a son. Now, it is, of course, a known fact that giving birth to a son ensures a kind of social power, a kind of social prestige that these people are praying for Shakuntala. Now, that is a fact because, unlike the United Kingdoms, that is England, we hardly find any queens acting as the supreme leader of a country. In India, the status of the queen was always a secondary one, a subordinate one. She is powerful because of her association with the king, the husband or the son. Therefore, the point of living for a person wedded to a king was to deliver a son, to ensure her social status. Anyway, now interestingly, they lived in this hermitage, and usually Shakuntala was seen, decking herself with flowers and beautiful herbs. Normally, she would use natural things to beautify herself. But here what is happening, see, a boy, a young person, brings certain gifts for Shakuntala, and they are rich ornaments and silk, and people ask that from where have you got these? And he says, "I found them, lady, through Father Konno's favor." Gautami asks, created by his mind power. So did Konno create all this wealth or wealthy objects by his imagination or power of the mind? "No, not quite. He directed me, saying, 'Go, bring lovely blossoms from the great forest, trees for Shakuntala's adornment.' So I went. A certain tree produced, as if by magic, a garment of silk, pale bright as moonbeams, fitting for this most auspicious occasion. Another noble tree poured out rich rose-red juice to tint beautifully her tender feet, to color her feet. In the branches of other stately trees, woodland nymphs unseen held out their hands, rivaling in beauty delicate leaf buds, unfurling means opening. So these nymphs were offering these buds or leaves which opened, and inside them there were rich gifts of rare jewels. So these ornaments or this silk, they are not born in natural circumstances, so to say. These belong to the world of men, not the world of nature. But here we see that the world of nature produces these beautiful objects. So we can say that Shakuntala has always been the magical link between the world of nature and world of man. Therefore, when she is turning into a woman of the city, a woman of the king's palace, then nature participates in her transformation, provides her with the tools of transformation. So she is here working as a link between the two worlds. Karna, who is very sad, of course, he has a lot of love for Shakuntala, and he says, Shakuntala leaves us today, sobs my heart, grief-stricken. Unshed tears choke my voiceless throat. He is not shedding tears because he is a sage, a hermit, and he is supposed to be outside these domestic ties, these domestic bounds. But he is still feeling sad. And he says, if affection can make me, a hermit grown old in the forest's hard school, so distraught. So he is a hermit who has grown in these forests, and he's not supposed to feel like a normal domestic man. If a person like him can feel so bad, so sad. Oh, how much more bitter must the anguish of the first parting from a daughter be to fathers who dwell in the heart of home and family. So how difficult then this pain must be for those fathers who live a domestic life. So here we see what we can call the Vatsalya Ras. Although in the original rasa theory, Vatsalya is not mentioned as a dominant rasa, but this Vatsalya Ras means the kind of love, the kind of sadness one associates with the child or with somebody's relationship with the daughter or with the son. And often we find that Vatsalya Ras is very prominently present, especially in context of father-daughter relationship. And what else does Karna say? He addresses Shakuntala and says, my beloved child, be held in high esteem by your lord as Sharmishta was by Yayati, as she bore Puru. So he now uses an allusion to Sharmishta and Yayati, and Sharmishta's position in Yayati's life was important because she was the mother of Puru. May you too bear a son to whom the whole world will bow. So he, despite being a sage, is talking about the heir that Shakuntala would bear Dushyanta, and he is talking about worldly matters here because he knows that only then Shakuntala's position can be ensured, her happiness can be ensured, her economic stability can be ensured. After a few lines, we see Karna talking about his hermitage and Shakuntala's relationship to it, saying, hear, O hear, all you noble trees of the holy grove with indwelling divinities. So he is addressing the trees of the holy grove. She who never had a drink of water before you had all drunk your fill. So Shakuntala always took care of the trees. He used to give water before she had her water. So that bond, that intimacy, which we have already seen in the first act itself, is now reinstated through Karna's words. She who never plucked your tender buds for love of you, though fond of adorning herself, she to whom it was a joyous festival when you first burst into bloom, she, Shakuntala, leaves us today for her husband's home, all grant her leave to go. So, of course, Karna is addressing the trees, which means that he is addressing everybody present there. And he is feeling very emotional about it. And he appreciates Shakuntala's dedication to the hermitage through these words. And it's like a farewell to her. And this quail bird, the cuckoo, that bird sings from the grove, and it is as if the grove is responding. So this nature as a living, vital presence, responding presence is established here. And Gautami says, "Dear child, do you hear the divinities of the holy grove bidding you farewell in as loving a manner as your own kinsfolk? Bow to them with due reverence." And Shakuntala is very sad, and she feels that she's leaving her, whatever she knew about life, she knew from this place, and she's really feeling very emotional naturally. Shakuntala speaks to Priyamvada, "Oh Priyamvada, even though my heart yearns to see my Lord once more, now that I am deserting the hermitage, I'm leaving the hermitage, my feet move forward with painful reluctance." She doesn't want to go. She's feeling reluctant. So this image of this bride leaving for the groom's house, leaving for the in-laws' house, this image has been performed and reperformed in drama after drama, down to today's movies, and we all are familiar with the kind of mixture of pain and optimism and apprehension and nervousness and sadness and happiness. And this combination of emotions is nowhere else seen in any other aspect of your life. This moment of leaving the father's house, this is a moment which we find in Indian literature all throughout. And this is the moment so beautifully captured by Kalidasa here, that she's saying, "I'm reluctant to go." And she's not just reluctant because she loves the people in the hermitage, she loves nature at the hermitage. She is reluctant to go because she's scared of the unknown. This place is known to her. She knows about this place. So this shift from a known territory to the unknown territory, that adds to her reluctance. Shakuntala, after this, wants to bid farewell to Madhavi. Madhavi is that plant, that tender plant, about which we have talked in the first act. And Karno says, "Yes, my child, I know how much you love her. Here she is to your right." And the way Shakuntala speaks to this plant, Madhavilata, it shows that Vatsalya is not just about Karno's emotions towards Shakuntala. It's also about Shakuntala's emotions towards this Madhavilata. And therefore, the rasa of Vatsalya is an all-encompassing emotion in this case. Everybody is getting touched by this moment. The friends are weeping, of course, and Karno reprimands, "Oh, for shame, Anushuva, Priyamvada, dry your tears. It is at a time like this that Shakuntala needs your support to be firm." And then Shakuntala talks about that young deer. "Father, you see that young doe keeping close to the cottage and moving very slowly because she is near her time. So the doe is about to give birth to little ones, and Shakuntala is worried about her, and she wants them to inform her when this young doe, this female deer, will be giving birth. She herself is pregnant. And somehow this connection which she makes between herself and that young doe is remarkable here. And somehow maybe she feels that she's associated with that deer somehow. And the moment she hears about the young fawns or the young deer that this doe will give birth to, she will feel safe, as if it is happening with her own life. Anyway, so after this, we see that Anushuva is talking to Shakuntala. "Shakuntala, dearest, have you noticed that there is not one sentient being in the hermitage that is not sorrowful now at the thought of losing you?" And she goes on talking about all the creatures. Karno decides to send Sangarava along with Shakuntala, and he instructs him with proper instructions. And he says, "Consider us." So he wants the king to hear this message. And what's the message? Consider us who are rich in self-restraint, because they belong to this hermitage and they practice all kinds of self-restraint. So he wants to emphasize that. And consider your own exalted lineage. So you are from a, great line, birth line. Consider well her love. So consider these three things. One, that we belong to a very honorable family of sages. Number two, you belong to a great line of kings. Number three, Shakuntala has a lot of love for you. So that's the third thing that he should consider. The first things are related to the social position, status of the two families. Consider well her love spontaneous, that flowed towards you unprompted by her kin. So unprompted by her kin means her family did not prompt her, did not instigate her. She did it out of her own wish. Regard her then as worth equal esteem as your other consorts, more than that rests on what fortune has in store for her, that bride's kin ought not to speak of it. So now we appeal to you to accept her as you other queens are accepted, and we will not ask for anything else, because we, being the family of the bride, are not supposed to ask for anything. So this is the general Indian system of, assigning certain levels of importance to the family of the groom compared to the family of the bride. Anyway, so Konno's message clearly says that he, number one, does not take any responsibility for Shakuntala's decision. Number two, he wants to emphasize on the fact that their family is a family of self-restraint. And number three, he says that this was a spontaneous thing that happened, and the king, because he belongs to an honest lineage, a good family, therefore he should accept Shakuntala. And then Konno has some advice for Shakuntala too. What does Konno advise Shakuntala? Serve your elders with diligence. Diligence means attention. Be a friend to your co-wives. Even if wronged by your husband, do not cross him through anger. I wonder what a feminist would say to that. Treat those who serve you with the utmost courtesy. Be not puffed up with pride by wealth and pleasures. Okay. Thus do girls attain the status of mistress of the home. Those who act contrary are the bane of their families. Bane means curse. So very common advice or sets of advices which he gives here. And somehow I feel that Konno, who is such, you can say, an honorable sage, a saintly figure, he doesn't talk about anything other than worldly matters here. He's talking about economics of domesticity. How to stay in power within the domestic frame. And then when Shakuntala is saying that I'm feeling like I'm, uprooted from my own place, then Konno says, "Oh my darling, why ever are you so distressed, occupying the honored place of consort to your nobly descended lord? You will each moment," so you will be with your husband, "and each moment be engrossed in great affairs consequent to his imperial estate." So you will be involved in his, high estate, all his affairs. You will be so busy in your royal world. And like the east, the bright and holy sun, soon you will give birth to a royal son. The grief of parting from me will then count but little with you, my darling. So he talks about the responsibilities, the future domestic ties that Shakuntala would have, which will eventually take her away from her family, and she will not think about Konno and his hermitage anymore. Now you remember Anuswa and Priyamvada, they had decided not to tell anything to Shakuntala about the curse, but somehow they had to talk about the ring. Otherwise, Shakuntala would be totally in the dark. So what do? While embracing her for the last time, they say, "Shakuntala dear, listen. if the good king be at all slow to recognize you, so they are not saying that if he doesn't remember you, doesn't recognize you, they are saying slow to recognize you, be sure to show him the ring inscribed with his name. So then show him the ring. They do not tell her the reason behind this. Shakuntala is a bit confused. You are voicing misgivings that make my heart tremble, and they still don't clarify. No, don't be afraid. Affection always makes one over anxious. We love you, so we are feeling a bit worried. That's why we said. And then Shakuntala asks Konno, dear father, when shall I see this holy hermitage again? So she knows that she's going away for good, but she wants to come back to visit her childhood home, her friends, those plants and trees, those flowers. And Konno replies, when you have long been co-wife with this great earth. Now remember in the previous act, we have said that the earth is wedded to the king. The king is the master of the earth, so the husband of the earth. And therefore, if Shakuntala is accepted at the king's palace, then she will be the co-wife to the earth itself, which is another wife of the king. So he says, when you have long been co-wife with this great earth, like not just go get accepted, come back to visit us, not like that. Extending to the far horizons. So the earth extends to the far horizons, and born Dushyanta a son. So he is talking about a time when Shakuntala would have settled herself, become a mother, a warrior unrivaled, who shall bear the yoke of sovereignty. And this child should be the future king. Then you shall set foot in this hermitage once more with your lord, seeking tranquility. So he's not entertaining the idea that if anything wrong happens, Shakuntala should come back. No, do not come back if anything wrong happens. Come back when everything is right. What kind of responsibility is that? I mean, you are actually supposed to say that the moment you face any problem, the moment you are not accepted, the moment something goes wrong with your pregnancy, come back. That is what is expected of a parent. And he's saying what? Come back only when you don't have a problem. Come back only when you have your husband to come with you. And this is the root cause of so much domestic violence in India. I'm sorry to say maybe I'm digressing a little, but these things must be discussed when we are reading these texts, because these texts are the mirrors to the society in which we still live. The responsibility of a successful marriage rests on the shoulders of the wife. The family does not participate in ensuring her a place of safe return. There are exceptions. There are situations where, the fathers, they provide the support which the daughter needs. But here, I'm sorry to say, no such support is extended. He simply sends her with some other fellows in the hermitage and just that's it. And that was not a time of, communication like we have today. She couldn't just ring him back from there that saying that, Father, I have a problem. So in a way, Konno is following the codes of society which set certain limits to the role of the bride's father. That your responsibility ends the moment she leaves your house. You can be sad, you can enjoy the sadness, because in that sadness there is this relief that you don't have to worry about her anymore. That's cruel, I guess. And Konno says at the end, when Shakuntala leaves for Dushyanta's palace, and he says, your great affection for her makes you feel this way. He addresses friends who are feeling very sad. Oh well, now that I have sent Shakuntala away to her home, my mind is at peace. how can his mind be at peace when he has not yet heard that she is safely placed at the palace? How can his mind be at peace when he does not know what would happen at the palace? This peace is kind of shrugging off responsibility. It is the peace which is the cause of Shakuntala's trouble. What if Konno had gone with her? Things would have been better for her. Definitely a guardian figure. And it would be, less easy for the people at the court to disregard the words, because if Konno was standing there, his honor, his accepted holiness would come into account here. Shakuntala is simply, you can say, abandoned without proper equipments to fight the battle which she is about to fight. And then he says, a daughter is wealth belonging to another. And the moment he uses the word wealth, this is a very disturbing thing, because wealth is something which is non-human, a material, a commodity. So this commodification of woman, this was and is, I'm sorry to say, it is still there in many families in our country and in many countries, that a daughter is respected because she is the Lakshmi of the house. She is the wealth of the house. A woman doesn't require your respect. She requires recognition. That recognition which Shakuntala is not given, not by her husband. And is she given any recognition by Konno, who is calling her a wealth? I have sent her this day to him. So this is a transference of wealth. Kanyadan. So, although in this Gandharvya marriage, there is no Kanyadan involved, but Konno is trying to adapt this marriage also to the kind of marriage where the father offers the hand of the daughter to a man. So in Gandharvya marriage, what happens? Two equally competent, equally sentient human beings, they come into a contract with their consent. No third person is involved here. So when Konno says, I have sent her this day to him, he is trying to bypass this Gandharvya tradition and impose the social laws where the father is the giver of wealth to the bridegroom and the bride is the wealth. I have sent her this day to him who took her by the hand. At once my inner being is calm and clear. So he is clear, his responsibility is done. As if I have restored what was left with me in trust. So his point is, Shakuntala, because she was adopted by him, was a responsibility that was trusted to him. And now her real place is the palace of Dushyanta. So he was simply a bearer, a carrier of that responsibility. And this, in a way, appears to be disturbing, because was Shakuntala burdened then? Didn't she qualify as a vital presence in the ashram? All that she has done for the plants, for the gardens, for the people of the ashrama, all that she has done, how can she be called simply a commodity? No matter how expensive commodity, but still a commodity. Interestingly, this man, Konno, he is addressing the trees as, sentient beings who can hear him. And he is calling Shakuntala an object that he can transfer to the right man. And he thinks now that he is at peace. He has no more worries about Shakuntala now that she has left the hermitage. So Shakuntala, leaving this secured boundary of nature, this heaven, is not just a journey to the unknown, but also a journey towards turning herself into a non-object, into a human. Here, she is always considered to be a tender object that has to be protected. Now she will emerge as a heroic figure, and we will see how she can fight her battle. So this moment, which is presented with so much sadness, is basically good for Shakuntala, because now she will be able to become what she is destined to be. So as we finish this act today, let me wish you all good luck for your upcoming exams. And if possible, I'll try to finish the whole text in time before your exams start. But in case I don't manage to do that, just remember that in all these 4 acts that we have already covered, I have tried to show you how to question the actions of the characters. Try to put in these original thoughts in your answers so that your answer should not be just a paraphrase of what has happened, but a question of why it happened. And place yourself in the position of the characters when you analyze them, and place them in the modern context and check their relevance. I'm sure you will have no difficulty. So stay tuned till my next class. Hope you all stay very happy till then. Stay subscribed. Bye-bye.